Okay, so 9.1 is about the composition of functions, and we're going to find the composition of two functions and the domain of the composition. And so we've got some general notations down here. I really like to write it more like this one instead of these other ones up here. So f of g of x, really, I like to write it as f of g of x. And so when we talk about this, the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out the outside function, which is f, and f is 3x plus 1. So what you want to do is wherever you see an x, you want to leave a pretty big space, because you're going to have to plug in to that big space whatever g is. And g is all of this up, x squared plus x minus 3. So number 2 is to take g of x and plug it in here, wherever you saw x in f of x. And so after that, all that really is left is for you to simplify this. And you want to do that by distributing this 3 to everything inside the parentheses. So we would get 3x squared. 3 times x would be a positive 3x. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9 minus 1. And so we have 3x squared plus 3x. The negative 9 and the negative 1 can go together and get us negative 10. So f of g of x is equal to 3x squared plus 3x minus 10. And I want to do the same thing for this one. This is g of f of x, so I would write it as g of f of x. You always want to start with the outside first. And so this time, we're starting with g of x, which is x squared plus x minus 3. Except for, wherever you see an x, we're going to leave a pretty big space so that we can come back and plug in our f. Because part 2 is going to be to take f and to plug it into both of these spaces, since there was 2 x's. And f of x is 3x minus 1. Now we're going to want to simplify this. So 3x minus 1 squared means 3x minus 1 times 3x minus 1. This plus would go with both of these things, but we've learned now that that really doesn't change anything. We just have 3x minus 1 minus 3. Now we're going to have to do that first, outer, inner, and last when we distribute this to get our answer. And 3x times 3x, that's going to be 9x squared. 3x times negative 1 is negative 3x. Negative 1 times 3x is negative 3x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is going to give us positive 1. And then we've got our plus 3x minus 1 minus 3. I'm going to scoot this problem down just a little bit so I can keep going. So g of f of x is equal to 9x squared. That's the only x squared I see. I do see a negative 3x, a negative 3x, and a positive 3x. If we combine all those, we're going to get negative 3x. And I see a plus 1 minus 1 minus 3. So that's going to leave us with minus 3 on the end. Now, both of those problems you're going to have to know how to do. You can't plug those in the calculator. However, for this next part, we could use the calculator. We know that f of g of x is equal to 3x squared plus 3x minus 10, because we just found it in the problem above. So if they're just changing it to f of g of 2, wherever we see x's, we would want to plug in a 2 there. And so plugging in a 2 for the x's, we would end up getting, this ends up being 12 plus 6 minus 10, which that's going to be 18 minus 10, which is going to give us 8. Okay, now I said you could do this problem in the calculator. So if you're going to do this in the problem in the calculator, I would back up and I would plug in this to my y equals. The reason I wouldn't plug in the simplified one is because I could have made a mistake there, and I'm pretty sure that this, since it's back at the beginning, it doesn't have any mistakes. So that's where we're going to go. We're going to plug that in the calculator. I just want to show you how you would get your answer that way. So if I go to y equals, and I plug in our new function, which we said was f of g of x, so I'm going to say 3 parentheses. I'm plugging in my g of x, which was x squared plus x minus 3, and then we have a minus 1 at the end. Okay, and I want to know, well, what happens when x is equal to 2 here? I'm going to go to second graph, and I'm going to look for 2. And 2 is right here, and right across from it is the answer that we got, which was 8. So that's how you would work this problem on your graphing calculator. Now we could do this one on the graphing calculator as well. G of f of 2. I do know, I'm going to go ahead and do it by hand, but we know g of f of x is equal to 9x squared minus 3x minus 3. We know that because we got that in the step above. So if I want g of f of 2, then wherever I see an x, I'm just going to plug in a 2 there. So wherever I see an x, I'm going to put a 2 there. This is going to be 36 minus 6 minus 3, which gives us 27. I'm not going to go back to the graphing calculator for this one, but if I was going to, I would plug in this top one because I feel like I didn't make any mistakes here. And then on my table, I would look for 2, and it should give me 27. Okay. So far in the domain, we've only talked about problems being if we have a fraction. So the domain of f of g of x should only happen, there should only be a problem if there's a fraction. Well, f of g of x is 3x squared plus 3x minus 10, and there is no problem there, so that's just all real numbers. The domain of g of f of x is, well, g of f of x is 9x squared minus 3x minus 3. No fraction again there, so the domain would be all real numbers. Okay, so here we have a few more examples of this, how to do the composition of functions. And so let's let our g of x be this purple, and we'll let our f of x be red. So this says f of g of x. First thing you want to do is start with your f function, and you want to, wherever you see an x, so 2x, we want to put a pretty big space, minus 5. Because in that big space, we want to put our g of x inside there. That's the number 2 part. And g of x is x squared minus 3x plus 8. If I'm going to finish this problem out, I'm going to go ahead and distribute that 2 to each one of these things. I'm going to simplify it. So I would get 2x squared minus 6x plus 16 minus 5. And then my final answer, f of g of x, would be 2x squared minus 6x, 16 minus 5 is plus 11. Okay, so if we want to go on down this column, these are all f of g's, except for this last one, which we'll have to do a different way. But these two right here, f of g of 7, I can just use my graphing calculator to solve that one. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go plug this in my graphing calculator. I'm starting with this one because I might have made a mistake on this one, right? We can always, when we're multiplying things out, it's easy to make a mistake. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the second one as well for my calculator. Okay, so I'm going to plug in 7 and -1, but I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to type this in. So when we type that in the calculator, I'm going to get 2 parentheses x squared minus 3x plus 8, close your parentheses off, 2x squared minus 3x plus 8, and then we also had a minus 5 on the end. So we're going to go to second graph, go look at our table. The two numbers we want to know were 7, and we also wanted to know -1. Well, -1's on here, it's 19. If we scroll down to 7, 7 is 67. So 19 and 67. 19 and 67. So it does save you some time. I mean, we could go back and plug 7 into each one of these and multiply it out. We could plug -1 into each of these and multiply it out. But also, you make sure to use your calculator as that resource. Okay, now this problem, it says g of f of x. So g is x squared minus 3x plus 8. And wherever we see an x, remember that we're going to put a blank, and you want to kind of put a pretty big blank because you know you're plugging in a whole function in there. And the function that we're trying to plug in there is, this is our number 2. We're going to drop it in to both of these places. F of x is equal to 2x minus 5. So 2x minus 5 goes here, 2x minus 5 goes here. Now, the most difficult part of this is finishing multiplying everything out and simplifying it. So we would do, so we have to do FOIL on this part. So the first times the first is 4x squared. First times the outer, I guess the outer is 2x times -5, which is -10x. Inner, -10x. -5 times 2x is -10x. And then the last, -5 times -5 is positive 25. -3 times 2x is -6x. -3 times -5 is positive 15. And then we've got our plus 8 at the end. So g of f of x is equal to 4x squared. Take care of that one. I have got some just regular x to the first power, so -10 and -10 and -6. That would be -26x. And then our numbers, 25, 15, that's 40 plus 8, 48. Okay, now, once again, I could have made a mistake here. So I'm going to, these are both g of f. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in my calculator and work these. So I'm looking for g of f of, sorry, let me erase that. G of f of 7, and I'm also looking for g of f of -1. Okay, so if I go and I plug this in my calculator right here, all of this stuff, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get the right answers. So let's pull our calculator back up. Going to go to y equals, clearing this out. I know it does take a little bit of time to do this. but it does help me to kind of make sure I'm not making some mistakes, or it might catch me. So 2x minus 5, we're supposed to square that. And then we've got minus 3 times 2x minus 5. And then we've got plus 8. We want to do second table. Now look at our table. Remember we were looking for -1. -1 looks like it's 78, and we're also looking for 7, which looks like it's 62. So 78 and 62. Okay. And what we would be doing if we plug this, if we did this the long way, we would be saying on this one, we would be saying 4 times 7 squared minus 26 times 7 plus 48. We would get the answer. The answer should be 62. Okay, for this last part, this is one that we could do on the calculator because we do have a number here. It's g of 1. So I know that I'm going to start out with my function that is g. Okay, and g is x squared minus 3x plus 8. So x squared minus x squared minus 3x plus 8. Also, we're plugging this in here, so it would be x squared minus 3x plus 8, x squared minus 3x then plus 8. And since they're plugging in a 1, we would put 1 in all of these places where we have x. So I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. I absolutely could work this problem on the calculator and probably would have a better chance of not making a mistake. Because this is a lot of room for error here. We're supposed to plug in a 1, a 1, a 1, a 1. Now it is nice that it's a 1, so that kind of helps me a little bit. If I do 1 squared, that's just 1 minus 3, -2. -2 plus 8 is going to be 6 squared. Okay, then we've got minus 3 times 1 minus 3, that's -2, plus 8, 6 again, plus 8. Okay, and so that's going to get me 36 minus 18, which is 18. 18 plus 8 is going to be 26. Okay, on this one we're doing f of x, so we still start on the outside. So it's a lot easier because f of x is just 2x minus 5, so 2 times x minus 5. What we're trying to plug in here is 2x minus 5 because that's f of x. So we want to distribute this and get 4x minus 10 minus 5. So 4x minus 15 would be f of x. And we would be done with that. So let's talk about the domain here. So the domain of f of g of x, well, so far we've talked about how, that's this function right here, we only have a problem if we have a fraction. So this would be all real numbers. This is g of f of x, and so far we only have a problem if there's fractions, and g of f of x is equal to 4x squared minus 26x plus 48. No fractions, so we're going to have all real numbers there. So this is 9.1. We're going to do a little bit more that's similar to this in 9.2.